Hello. And on this episode of the Talking Ship podcast brought to you by shipmyplants.com, we have a very special guest, Mr. Bill Calkins. Bill Calkins is a marketing and communications professional with experience leading a diverse range of activities related to B2B sales messaging, retail business segment management, digital and social communications, and product marketing management. An innovative writer, video and podcast host, and public speaker with a wide range of knowledge and skills, Bill has been with Ball Horticultural Company for 17 years and is currently a digital communication manager working with Ball Seed's technical services team and senior editor of Grower Talks magazine. Without further ado, here is Bill Calkins. What can you tell us about the importance of trade media in horticulture?
That it's an interesting topic because our industry has strong trade media and has for a long time. I know the most about Grower Talks and Green Profit magazine. Grower Talks have been around since 1935, so been covering the industry for a long time. I think that the longevity is important, but more importantly is just that you have professional journalists who are dedicated to the industry. Again, speaking for Ball Publishing and Grower Talks, we have, more than 100, probably almost 200 years experience combined in the industry. Editors who are trained journalists, but very much focused on the health and growth of the industry. Our editors across the industry, trade magazines, tend to be really inquisitive, but objective, right? You're a journalist. You have to have your own sort of filter on what you hear. But the goal is always to find the innovations, filter them through your own knowledge of the industry, ask other experts, have everybody weigh in, and then produce content that shares the innovation in a way that your overall readership can apply it in their own business. And as you know, Rich, our industry is full of different kinds of businesses, from huge plant factories to small backyard greenhouses. And as a trade magazine, you're really speaking to everybody. And I think that's always been my goal as an editor, is to make sure that the content applies to growers of all skill levels and sizes and industry experience. The other element is just the contacts, right? As a journalist, you're only as good as your sources. And when I talk to our editors, they have contacts across all the different levels of the industry, from the front lines, growers who are working every day in greenhouses, all the way to like government advocates and folks who go to Capitol Hill every year to advocate for our industry from a high level. And having all those contacts allows you to have go-to people for different topics, and then to make sure that what you're saying is accurate. So a journalist is only as good as their sources and contacts. And thankfully, if you're in the industry for a long time, your contacts are also your friends and folks that you have dinner with and can talk off the record to make sure that what you're saying on the record is accurate and relevant.
So since this podcast title is How Plants Come to Market, what are all those processes like, and what can you tell the listeners that maybe some of the behind the scenes information that's just neat and cool about how a plant goes from nobody knows what it is, it was bred somehow, to hey, this is now being marketed to consumers?
Sure. I always think about, and I'm not a plant breeder, so I can talk about it from a high level, but I always remember the plant breeders, to me, are magicians. They can take an abstract idea and make it a real living thing. And they're doing it in natural ways, which is the most amazing to me. We're very different than other industries in that we do traditional natural plant breeding as an industry. So how a plant comes to market, usually it starts with solving a problem. And that's something that struck me over the last, I would say, 5 years more than ever before, is breeders are able to take in the information from growers where they're struggling with a crop, where the timing is off, the uniformity isn't where it needs to be, and bring that all in with a ton of different data points and create a plan to breed a plant. And then it really takes a huge team, because there's years, decades sometimes going into bringing a plant to market because of the amount of trialing that's needed, because it's a natural process. If somebody comes and says, I want a bright blue petunia with the map of my state in the middle of, in the center of the petunia, that could be a realistic goal for other industries to create something that fine-tuned, but our industry, we're still dealing with living things and with traditional plant breeding. So I like to say it comes down to what's good for the grower primarily. So we tend to breed to solve production problems, whether that's susceptibility to disease, or, like I said, something like uniformity. And then you bring in the consumer demand. What is a home gardener going to want this plant to do in their yard? And that can be, something down to their specific region or location, all the way to just a new need. We're starting to see, or we've seen for the last 10 years, a lot of breeding for large patio containers. And instead of just taking a existing plant and plopping it into that patio container and saying, no, it's a container plant. No, the breeders have really worked on the size and format of plants to make sure that they're filling all those needs. New breeding is technology, so a lot of it's upgrades, true improvements on existing plants. Like I said, starting with the needs of the grower and then all the way to the consumer, which really just ends up driving demand. But like I started by saying, the pipeline is long and wide, and you start with a lot of plants when you're trialing, and you might only introduce 5 new plants a year, but they're going to be good, and they're going to be bred for a reason, not just because plant breeders need something to do.
So are they looking for variations within a crop and to say this, or are they specifically taking traits that they're, have in mind, or is it both?
It's both. There are plenty of new varieties that come to market within an existing series that they exhibit something different than we've seen before. A good example would be the dragon wing begonia. It's been around for decades, and suddenly you find a sport that's a bright lime green, or a very chartreuse green, and that product comes to market. And so those kind of things do happen. I tend to think that more often you're looking for a wider color range within an existing series, but again, it has to fit that very specific format or spec of that entire series. And then there's the weird stuff. I mean, there's plenty of plant breeding that's more plant selection, going on and finding something super unique that's completely new to the market. And then the final thing is taking crops that have been traditionally produced vegetatively from cuttings and dialing in the seed production so that you can then bring that product to market as a seed sourced plant, which has all sorts of benefits that we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But bringing traditional vegetative products to market as seed sources is certainly something we see a little bit of here and there.
Yeah, I noticed that there had been an emphasis in recent years about that exact thing, like seed sourced, like traditional vegetative plants. And for the listeners that don't know what a vegetative plant is, we're talking about plants that are propagated from hybridized cuttings that are typically stronger genetics, right? I mean, like the Supertunia series from Proven Winners. And from a grower perspective, the cost, right? The cost to produce that is significantly less if it's from seed than it is if it's from cuttings. And as long as the performance is there, those are breakthrough breeding, like you said, from a grower perspective. And the consumer has no idea, right?
No, and because if the breeding company's done its work, the end result is just as good or better. And the other good thing about seed is you can have it in a bag versus having to depend on offshore production facilities shipping in a live plant. Sure, a majority of our of our, big popular annuals do come in as cuttings, and they do great, and growers love getting cuttings in. But it's nice to have an option that's in a bag,
Mhm.
in a warehouse that you can order from.
With all of that, one thing that, maybe if a plant breeder is listening to this podcast, I would like to see a climbing petunia.
Mm.
I've always thought, some of these mounding, spreading petunias that trail, they're super awesome. Especially if you're in a place that doesn't get super, super hot, because they tend to not love that. They're a little bit of a cooler season plant. I mean, they're obviously thrive in the summer, but that's neither here nor there. But I would like to see a climbing petunia. So somebody get on that if you're not already doing it. Maybe Bill knows something I don't know, but
I don't. I would love to see a petunia climbing up a trellis by a mailbox or on a fence. I mean, there are petunias that get that big. Tidal Wave is, it's a seed raised petunia that can eat a small child. But you're right. Something climbing, and it would be really cool. And you would think that that's possible with the trailing and spreading habit. I don't know. I'll ask.
Yeah, I mean, I've brought this up before, and they're like, just plant a mandevilla or something. I'm like, yeah, but I still want a climbing petunia. And the color selection as well is significantly different within petunias. So, and the breeding, like, in the Garden Trends report, they talked about, from that Garden Media Group put out, they talked about how goth gardening is a trend, and the black like the black petunias that you see out there are really popular. And so that all comes out of this breeding towards trends. Really, we're in a lot of ways, we're in the fashion industry.
Yes.
It's decorating.
And watch your trade magazines, because they're all going to be reporting on the color of the year. And I'm sure that the breeding and introduction companies have already started matching plants up, because I think digitally now you can, I know that at Ball we can Pantone match blooms, and that's really cool, and but does allow you to fit trends really well.
It's amazing. Like, we're just, this is decorating. These people are putting these pots around the outside of their home mostly, but obviously there's indoor gardening as well. And so it just, at a simplified level, that's really the business that we're in.
It's true.
In a lot of ways, besides wellness and other things. But you're lucky enough, you get to go to the California spring trials and the pack trials. And I've never been able to go because of the time of year, running a garden center in the Midwest. I just can't be away. But tell us what it's like going to the trials out there, and how that process works, and who goes, and what is the purpose behind that.
I know it from both sides. It's a lot of work for the companies that exhibit, but there's a lot of benefit that's gained from it. And you gave me a perfect segue, because it is fashion. And we used to say that California Spring Trials, or we used to call it Pack Trials, is Fashion Week for our industry, where the new products are introduced, and you get to tell the story about the product to an audience that's hungry for new innovation. And it's a lot like Fashion Week in that sense. The media's there. You get a lot of buzz out of it, and there's a lot of activities that go on around that week. Now it's actually like Instagram fashion too, because there's a lot of photos taken, a lot of bloom shots that you see all throughout the week on social media. And attendees have been really good at helping promote the product throughout the week, so that everybody around North America and the world can see what's going on at spring trials, including all the videos that are produced. And with that, the audience has changed, because in the past it was a mix of distribution companies, growers of all shapes and sizes. You had your trade media, you had some consumer media, and it was really a blend, and the audience was very much blended. And now I see the vast majority of attendees to the spring trial stops are distribution in sales companies, and they bring their entire teams out. And what that says, I think, about the industry is how invested the suppliers are in the new technology, because they are out there to learn. They really ask the hard questions. They want to position the products so that they can take that message out to greenhouses all across North America when they walk in with the new variety catalogs. And first question is, what's new? So a heavy audience of distribution companies, large growers with a lot of reach. So growers that serve multiple markets tend to come out to spring trials every year to see what's new. You get some university folks and academics. You get actually a significant amount of consumer media are out there looking at what's new. The challenge is that most of it's at least a year away when they see it. But it's a great event. There's a lot of education that's done, a lot of learning by the breeding companies of what's expected and what's needed with those new varieties. And they've got to be ready to go. You've got to know how to grow them, how to produce them effectively, what the source is for them. You really can't introduce any. I would say in past years, decades ago, products were just shown and rolled out, and then they kind of figured out the supply chain behind them. And now they've got to be locked and loaded, ready to go, ready to order samples almost right away. So it's a great event. I've enjoyed it. Every year I go, I learn something new. And it's also a social event in that you reconnect with folks that you probably haven't seen too much throughout the year, and really have a chance to, catch up, discuss the industry, figure out what happened last year and how to improve this year.
The breeding and the trials and all of that, there's a lot of technology that goes into it. And it seems like, the consumer horticulture industry is maybe behind the rest of the world or other industries in technology to some degree, but obviously there's so much uniqueness to it. And because we're dealing with nature and live things, there's all these other variables. Like you said, you can't just print the shape of a state in the center of a flower. I always hear this, and I don't know how much it's true, but America is always behind Europe on the greenhouse tech. And then we catch up a few years later. But where do you see, and how can you speak to where we are on this side of the pond as far as the technology goes? And then where's the future of technology going in the greenhouse industry? Are we going to see robots packing plants in boxes or pulling orders and putting them on racks? What's going to happen here?
I'll dust off my crystal ball. No, it's really hard to say. I think technology in our industry is driven by necessity, not necessarily forward thinking. It's reactionary, but the technology is there. And thanks to the fact that we are a global industry, when growers are ready for the technology, it tends to be ready to go. So we've seen increases in automation over the last 15, 20 years, maybe longer, but certainly within the time I've been in the industry, the discussion of automation has, peaked, and now it's just a reality. I also think that we're going to see it increase rapidly because, again, the costs are coming down, the technology is improving, and the automation equipment is really become excellent and user friendly and supported well by the supplying companies. So, I think we will see our industry become more sophisticated when it comes to using data as well. The data that's captured can then be analyzed very quickly, as we know, and used to make better decisions. When you think about being a much more of a data-driven industry, the opportunities are endless. We've talked about, when unrooted cuttings are packed and shipped out of a farm in Central America, we know how many are packed and shipped, and we tend to know the quality of that product. Then when they're received at a greenhouse in Indiana, who then runs them through an automated transplanter, there's data that can be collected there. And, there's no reason why that data couldn't be automated and shared, through the cloud and captured on both ends with, and then out of that comes improvements. So that's just kind of a broad and loose example, but I do think that the technology in our industry is going to rapidly improve. And then the technology in terms of marketing, I think just the ability to share information quickly, whether you're doing podcasts or videos or social. I mean, there's so many opportunities to reach customers through the use of technology.
I think I can add to that from a data-driven standpoint. I believe that RFIDs will become a part of the connection of technology that will work hand in hand with AI in data collection and using that data, and maybe even the AI helps bring a rough draft to life of a production schedule for the future. When you tie when something was shipped from the grower to the retailer, to what's selling faster, when it sold out, time of year, putting known weather data all together, and have that AI really crunch that for us and say, you know what, you guys should have grown 3 times as many black velvet petunias, but been out of them by May 14th, and then gone right into, Angelonia. It's something that I think, we all can sit there and think about ourselves, but we have to go through the data and look at it. But I think that once all of those technologies in the supply chain can marry themselves to one shared cloud, like you said, I mean, that's where a lot of our time is spent, is like trying to figure out, where the waste was and where the missed opportunities were.
And a lot of that's if you do it manually now, if a grower does that manually, it takes time. It usually happens at they need to crunch that data when they're already getting busy with mums. I mean, it's really kind of an interesting, the speed in our industry. Like, there is no downtime anymore. We were just joking that, how do you ship poinsettias this time of year, sanitize your greenhouse, and then receive your unrooted cuttings like in a month? Like, it's so crazy how everything is sped up, but the information is there, and the companies across our industry have this information in databases. I mean, you can't not collect data these days, but it's a matter of how do you extract it and build those models that make use of it. So
yeah. And I see most of the technology in the industry is about saving time. And it's like the old adage that time is money. I was actually visiting a young plant grower up in Michigan yesterday that does root cuttings from conifers and some deciduous plants like viburnums and so forth like that, and burning bush, and but really they're like arborvitaes and Technique, green giant, all that stuff. And he's like, let me show you the project I'm working on right now. So we go over the one house where all they're doing is they do plugs of 2 crops. It's boxwood and taxus use. And he's like, in the plug tray, it takes so long. So I'm putting in a heated floor and just putting in the PEX tubing. It's just a sand. And a lot of growers can probably relate to this. It's rudimentary. They got a sand floor with a weed fabric over it. And he's like, yeah, I'm just running, I got a boiler off of Facebook Marketplace for pennies on the dollar. And the whole reason I'm doing this is I'm going to save 6 months in crop time by keeping the root zone warmer. And so it's all about speed. And that's just it's a very simple example, but if we can speed things up, then we can, maybe have more time to take a vacation and relax and go to the pack trials and catch up with our buddies. So let's talk about how Ball supports the consumer horticulture industry from a, I think I told you this, that, when I talk to other people about Ball, I never hear anything negative. People in our industry really love and appreciate what Ball does, because they've always been supportive to the entire supply chain. And it seems like they're not taking sides with anybody either. It's like, what's best for horticulture, and just the people that work there. You know, talk a little bit about the ways that Ball, you know, supports the industry.
You mentioned it, the people, and I really do. It's kind of cliche, but it does come down to the people, and that starts at the top of our company. I mean, I always say we are a family business selling to family businesses. We're a fourth generation business with strong leadership for generations, and no matter how large Ball grows, and we are an international company, we still maintain that sort of authentic family entrepreneurial spirit that's been around since day one. And that's not just something we say, that's something you feel in the company culture. And I've been at Ball 17 years, and every decision that's made in the company at any level is made to benefit our customers. And again, sounds very cliche, but it's very true. And I can also say that folks who don't share those passions aren't there long. But on the flip side, the tenure of employees at Ball is extremely long, and been around like 120 years and continuing to focus on that core value. But beyond that, you know, you could look at that and say, oh, there's a nice company that's very comfortable in what they are. No, we are driving for innovation and improvement. We're measured on improvement and innovation, and that includes research facilities. We have a division called Ball Helix that does some of the most scientific research into plants of any company in the world. Our breeding companies are constantly improving facilities, and that's all to bring better products to market for our customers and for the garden centers who sell them and for the consumers who use them. It's breakthroughs. We love to breed breakthroughs, but also improvements like we've talked about. We are data driven, but I always say we're data driven, but with a heart, because you can't strictly rely on data and automation. It doesn't always translate to customer service, and you can still pick up the phone and call someone at Ball, which benefits everybody. We hear it repeated all the time, you know, how nice it is to be able to pick up the phone and call someone. And then the other thing I really want to bring up is education, because it's been a legacy of Ball forever, from day one. You know, back when you knew every customer by name to now where, you know, you have thousands of customers in the database. It's about education and helping the industry learn and improve. And that goes to having a publishing division that produces a trade magazine. And there's no other, you know, there are very few. I can't imagine many other industries in general that have, you know, one of their leading suppliers also publishing a trade magazine that is objective, you know, where Grower Talks isn't there to promote Ball. You know, we take ads from Ball just like we take ads from everyone else. And our editors are smart enough to know that if you become a mouthpiece for the company you work for, you suddenly lose all credibility. So it's, you know, so we have a publishing division. We publish a book, a reference book called The Red Book, you know, on like 19th edition of it. And again, it's like a textbook to help people grow better plants. And you know, it's this legacy that everyone takes very seriously, because although we do want to serve our customers in the best way possible, we also want to benefit the industry as a whole, because we're just, I don't know, it's just part of the DNA of the company. But you know, when I talk to my boss, who's the national sales manager for Ball Seed, our distribution arm, it's all about what's good for the grower. And that's because he was born and raised in a family greenhouse. And there's many people within the leadership of the company that grew up, you know, walking under the benches in the family greenhouse. And I think it's that if that is what you point to every day, or your legacy, then you're going to do what's best for your customers. You don't sacrifice the long term for the short term. And you know, we're a business full of plant people, really, and just like most of the businesses in our industry.
Well, Bill Calkins, I think this has been a wonderful conversation, about, how plants come to market, but also just the consumer horticulture industry. Obviously, I hope to see you soon. And thanks again. This has been another episode of the Talking Ship podcast with your host, Rich Christakis, and our guest, Bill Calkins. Thank you. See you next time.